Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Mancuso, and today's video is all about the basics of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is how plants make sugars. So first of all, the goal, making sugar, C6H12O6. We can't do it, who can? Autotrophs can. So plants, algae, things like that are capable of producing glucose. All right, what do they need? The inputs, meaning the requirements necessary, are sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Without those three things, it cannot do photosynthesis. And then the outputs are the productions. It produces glucose and it produces oxygen gas. And I'm sure you're familiar with this formula, but I want to make sure you have it there in your notes. You're going to need carbon dioxide and water to produce glucose and oxygen. And again, when I say I'm talking about the organism that we're studying, the plants or the algae. All right, so let's get right into the anatomy. To understand how a plant's able to do photosynthesis and we're not, we've got to understand what they have. So some basic requirements. You have to have at least pigments to absorb light energy. Without those pigments, you can't do photosynthesis. So we do not have pigments like chlorophyll, so we're not able to do it. Some organisms that are very, very simple, like algae, they do have chlorophyll, but they don't even have chloroplast. So instead, they can be prokaryotic and still do photosynthesis as long as they're able to fold in their cell membranes, and that will allow them to do some of these processes we'll spend more time on in the next videos. All right, the most abundant autotrophs have a great amount of adaptations that are worth talking about. So the most abundant autotrophs are angiosperms. So that is the phyla of plant that flowers. And their adaptations include roots. So roots are how to get the water. So we talked about the requirements of water and carbon dioxide. You got to have adaptations that allow you to maximize the amount of water absorption. So roots, having root hairs, is going to give you more surface area to absorb more water. And then a transport system is to move what you are required and what you are making. So xylem is going to move what is required. You need water, so that's a transport system for moving water. It's all due to transpiration, which means that water is constantly evaporating out of the stomate of the leaf, and it's being pulled up as a cohesive column of water through xylem cells. And then phloem, as the plant produces sugars, there has to be a way of moving the sugars from where they are produced to where they are needed. So for example, if you look at a tree outside, the leaves are green and doing photosynthesis, and the roots are underground and they're not able to even capture light. So the sugars have to move from where they're made in the leaves down to the roots. And that's called a source to sink process, and it's based on what's called the pressure flow theory. All right, the third adaptation are leaves, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time on the structure of a leaf. All right, so first of all, a cuticle is the waxy covering. So if you want to go ahead and draw, it might be more helpful actually if I make a new screen and I draw one right here along with you. So if I have a leaf, so here's, oh my goodness, you know how I can't draw. Here's my leaf. So let's say this is an oak leaf. And these lines are what are known as veins. If I take it and I cut it like this, and I look in this direction, I can see layers. The top layer is what's called the cuticle. So I'm going to draw this right across here. This is the cuticle. Sorry, it's really hard to write neat on here. And then underneath the cuticle is the first layer of cells. And any first layer of cells is called your epidermis. Let's see if I can write it right down here. No. Okay, epidermis. Oops. Oh boy. All right, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try writing on here. Okay, so messy. I apologize. That is the epidermis, that first layer of cells. Okay, I'm going to start a new one. This is a mess. Here's my cuticle. Here's my epidermis. I'm just writing with my finger. A little bit easier to do that. So that was cuticle. This was epidermis. Okay, the next layer has cells that are really packed together here, and they tend to make up a huge line. This is called the palisade mesophyll. All right, I know what I'm going to try. I'm going to type it out. All right, this layer right here is the palisade mesophyll, and the thing that is super recognizable about it is that it has a lot of chloroplasts. So each of these little dots that I'm putting in there, those are chloroplasts. That is the main site of photosynthesis in a leaf, is the palisade mesophyll. So I like to remember it like this: P for palisade, P for packed together, P for photosynthesis, and that is where it is. All right, the next layer has cells that are a little bit more spread out. So due to their spread out appearance, they are known as spongy mesophyll. So mesophyll is a term for a pretty generalized parenchyma cell, which is a plant cell, and these cells are pretty basic and do the basic jobs of photosynthesis. All right, the next thing that I need is another epidermis. So I'm actually going to give a little space here. All right, here's my lower epidermis. And then I want you to notice this space. This space here is known as a stomate. And then the cells on either side of the stomate are the guard cells. All right, so let's talk about what goes on here. On the bottom of a leaf, but not on the top, because on the top, with the sun hitting the leaf, it would lose far too much water. So we need to have some substances that go in, and we have to have some substances that go out. So in, we said that we need oxygen to do photosynthesis. Oh, I'm sorry, CO2. We said that we need carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis. So carbon dioxide is going to come in. And then we produce oxygen. So oxygen is going to come out. And another thing that comes out is water, really because it's just moving from high concentration to low concentration. So the air has lower water potential than inside of the cell. Inside the cell, there's really high water potential, meaning there's a lot of water, and so the water is more likely to move out of it into the air. All right, the guard cells. So this cell right here, this cell is going to be really important for, sorry, I don't want to text, I want a pen. Okay, this cell right here and this cell right here, they're going to be able to control the amount of potassium ions they have. And as they increase their ion concentration, they'll bring in more water. When they fill up with water, then their stomate, so the space in between them, is wide open. So think about it. If a plant has a lot of water, it'll open up the stomate, and that allows carbon dioxide to come in, which is great for doing photosynthesis. But instead, if the conditions are really dry and the environment has a really low water potential, then those cells are going to start losing too much water. And so to prevent the cell from losing too much water, the guard cells will actually close, which means that as they lose water, they dehydrate, they come closer together, and now the stomate is closed and the plant doesn't lose as much water. All right, next thing. Here's another diagram. So if you want to give yourself a quick little test with this, I would definitely want you to, in your notebook, I would love for you to get some Google images, and especially if you can find some blank ones. So do blank leaf anatomy and see if you can print them out and fill them in yourselves. So this layer right here, all of these cells, these are my palisade mesophyll. And up here, this lining on the top, this is the cuticle. Sorry, again, it's just super hard to write with this. Okay, these cells right here, that's my epidermis. And then at the bottom, there's more epidermis. And then this layer right here, I'll do it in red. This is my spongy mesophyll where there's more space. And then right here, I'm going to put a GC. These two cells are both guard cells, and then this opening in the middle here, that's the stomate. That's how water would escape. It's how oxygen gas would escape, and it's how CO2 would get in. All right, another diagram, same layers. This one's cool because it shows a vein coming in. So a vein is a vascular bundle, so it's going to have the xylem that moves the water and the phloem cells that move the sugars. All right, now we have to talk about anatomy of a chloroplast. So within that palisade mesophyll are cells that could have as many as 20 to 200 chloroplasts per cell. So chloroplast is really going to be this functional area where photosynthesis occurs. The cells will still have mitochondria and vacuoles and ribosomes and nucleus and all that sort of stuff, but by far it has the most abundant chloroplasts. So chloroplast structure. Inside a chloroplast, there's open space, that's called stroma, and then there's stacks of membranes, and that's called grana. The stacks of membranes, so I just want to extend this a little bit. The grana, the stacks actually look like this, and the membrane is here, and then there is a fluid-filled area in the middle. So this part here is called the lumen or the thylakoid space. I'll spell that for you. Okay, so the lumen is the middle area. So right here, if I go back to the diagram, it is this area right here. There is liquid in between the membranes. But these membranes, this is where the photosystems are going to be. So that's where I'm going to be able to find the chlorophyll. All right, so I go back up to my diagram. I have two really important parts. I have the stroma, which is the liquid, and then I have the grana, which makes up these thylakoid membranes. There's, well, granum, grana in plural. All right, and here's a picture under a microscope. So you can see here is one cell, and then all of those chloroplasts are within it. So this cell definitely has the function of photosynthesis because it has a very abundant amount of chloroplasts. Okay, you need photosystems, and photosystems are clusters of pigments that are able to absorb light. And where you're going to find those is in that thylakoid membrane of the grana. All right, let's talk about the big picture of photosynthesis. First of all, the light reaction. The light reaction occurs in the grana. You need the chlorophyll in the thylakoid membrane to do the light reaction. And the light reaction uses light energy and it splits water. That's called photolysis. And when it splits water, it produces oxygen gas, but it also provides electrons necessary for the light reaction. Another part of the light reaction is that hydrogen ions, protons, H pluses, from splitting water are going to be used to make NADPH. NADPH is a coenzyme, and it is an important product of the light reaction and reactant for the light independent reaction. So we need to make it in the light reaction and then use it in the Calvin cycle. ATP is another product of the light reaction, and it's going to get used in the Calvin cycle. So again, photosynthesis, two major steps of it. One is the light reaction and one is the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is also called the light independent reaction. They used to call it the dark reaction, but it doesn't really happen in the dark, so they don't really call it that anymore. All right, this reaction's in the stroma, the liquid part of a chloroplast. And this is going to use the NADPH and use the ATP from the light reaction. And it's going to use the carbon dioxide that's coming in through those stomates. And this is the sugar building step. So this is what makes the glucose and produces the sugar. All right, so I have this diagram that I really love. And you can draw it in your own notebook and you can get it on Google and add to it. But here's one chloroplast. And the chloroplast uses light, and it does the light reaction in the grana. It uses the chloroplast pigments, which are usually chlorophyll, that are right here in the thylakoid membrane. And it uses that to absorb electrons of light and to produce ATP and to produce NADPH. And then over here is the Calvin cycle happening right in the stroma. it takes the carbon dioxide that came in through a stomate, and it's able to use the NADPH and use the energy from the ATP and actually produce sugar. So down here, one of the products of the light reaction is oxygen, and one of the products of the Calvin cycle is sugar. Those are our two main outputs. All right, so that's the end of this first video. Please take the time to go back over your notes and make some good diagrams for yourself. Definitely look through the textbook. It also has good diagrams and good explanations, and print out some diagrams that you Google.